it's been a full day today. Good Lord, it's nice, bright, and sunny. I'm gonna go on a bike ride when I get home. I gotta fix my tire. Try not to fuck it up while I have to put a new tube in the tire. So I gotta make sure I don't bust the new tube I just bought. It's a beautiful day in Minnesota. Another great day for NPR stream. Like I said in the video I updated earlier, I gotta have a damn 1,000 people subscribe to my channel. So, I mean, that is absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure I could do it on Facebook, and I'll probably start maybe migrating more towards Facebook with continuing to post at YouTube. So it's really just trying to figure out the best way to build this channel, build this audience, build off of what me and Chris are doing on Well, That's Your Opinion, Man, helping to create more content for us, pushing out these more moderate voices, and at least what, in my personal opinion, more rational voices than what we are. Why are you braking for no reason, motherfucker? All right, well, let's listen to some NPR here.
Supporters of a clean energy mandate say climate change is too urgent a problem to leave it up to the market. Several thunderstorms spawned multiple funnel clouds across Minnesota yesterday. The National Weather Service reports there was some crop damage from a tornado touchdown in Steele County near Ellendale, but no major structural damage. Today's highs mid-70s across Minnesota. This is NPR News.
Support for news comes from Visiting Angels, professional caregivers assisting adults at home in bathing, dressing, meals, and light housework nationwide. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Learn more at 1-800-365-4189. And TIAA, committed to the idea that while most things in life run out, from clean shirts in the morning to favorite desserts at night, lifetime income in retirement shouldn't. Learn more at TIAA.org/neverrunout.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Let's catch up now on what we know and what we don't about the circumstances of Jeffrey Epstein's death. This past weekend, the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender was found unresponsive in his jail cell on apparent suicide. Since then, troubling details have emerged about the jail. Attorney General William Barr has opened an investigation. The warden has been reassigned, and 2 guards who were supposed to be monitoring Epstein have been placed on administrative leave. Well, joining us now with the latest is Daniel Ivory of the New York Times. And Daniel, just what is the latest you have been
every 30 minutes? We're not doing those checks.
These are the 2 guards I mentioned who have now been placed on leave.
That's right. So one of them was a full-time correctional officer. The other one was actually not a correctional officer, although he was a former correctional officer. He was someone who had a different role in the prison now, but had volunteered for overtime to get some extra pay as a correctional officer.
You also have reported that there's some evidence that they falsified records, saying we checked on him, even though your reporting now shows that maybe they were asleep.
We did hear that from 3 government officials, that it is thought that they falsified records to show that they had been checking every 30 minutes when in fact they had not.
That would be a crime, right? False entries in an official log?
That could be a federal crime, yes.
Have these 2 guards commented, or has their union said anything?
The 2 guards have not commented, as far as I know. I've heard from some union officials that they feel it's unfair that the staff members that were working as guards seem to be getting most of the blame for what happened. They think that management is culpable here as well.
I know through your reporting and others that federal prisons across the country are suffering staffing shortages. Can you just speak briefly to what the pressure is on guards, including at this facility, to work overtime?
Absolutely. So when we did the investigation about a year ago, we found that people were working incredible amounts of overtime, life-changing amounts, where they couldn't hold relationships together because they were working so much overtime. What happens when you're working in one of these federal prisons where staffing is short is that you might work an 8-hour shift as a correctional officer, and at the end of your shift, before you can leave, you're told you need to work an 8-hour shift. And if you refuse, then you can be written up for it or be fired. So most people do not refuse. They do it. And then you go home and you can only sleep for maybe like 5 hours. And then you have to go back to work.
But it does give some context to why guards, without justifying anything, explaining why guards might fall asleep.
Exactly. You can understand how it's plausible for guards to fall asleep for several hours on the job without it being a conspiracy theory.
It sounds like there were real problems in terms of the way that Jeffrey Epstein was being held. Is there anything you've been able to find in your reporting that suggests he was being treated in a different way from other people being held at this facility, or does this speak to wider staffing problems or management problems at the correctional facility?
It does seem to echo problems that I've seen at other federal facilities. It doesn't stand out to me, except that Jeffrey Epstein is such a high-profile figure. But there's been no evidence so far that I've seen that
he was being handled
treated
in a radically different way.
Yes, exactly.
That is Daniel Ivory of the New York Times. Thank you so much.
Seems very odd. Epstein was being held in a very prominent jail in New York. If I'm not mistaken, El Chapo was also held at this facility. This was not your jail down the streets, or your jail in the countryside. This was a real deal. High-profile people went to this jail, so that seems a little odd.
To ban what he sees as the addictive elements of social media.
Senator Josh Hawley is a freshman senator from Missouri, but he is quickly making a name for himself as the representative for an increasing number of Americans who are angry with social media companies.
Yeah, well, their business model is increasingly exploitative in nature. And I think that, look, these are companies that have tried to evade accountability.
Hawley proposed a bill that would require social media companies to tell users every 30 minutes how long they've been on the platform each day. It would also ban features that he views as addictive. The legislation would make illegal infinite scroll, which endlessly populates apps with additional content. It would also prohibit the autoplay of video and audio.
The big tech platforms have adopted a business model that takes our private information without telling us, sells it without our consent, and then tries to use exploitative and addictive practices in order to get us to spend more time on their platform so they can take more stuff from us.
Hawley's proposal strikes at the heart of that business model.
70% of the time spent on the YouTube platform, for example, is spent watching videos that the algorithm recommends.
That's Lindsay Gorman, a fellow for emerging technologies at the German Marshall Fund, explaining just how crucial these sorts of features are to these businesses.
Their business model is based on user engagement and time spent on the platform. Certainly, they're using sophisticated psychological measures like the autoplay feature and others to keep people on the platform.
Hawley's legislation isn't likely to pass, but the openness with which this legislation has been greeted illustrates something deeper about the mood in Washington. The lack of regulations on social media companies as compared to their power is nudging conservatives to go against their general principle, a hands-off approach to business. Hawley's bill would have government micromanage what features these tech companies can use. But Republican Senator Ted Cruz, a champion of free markets, seems at least open to it.
Nobody wants to see a federal speech police, but at the same time allowing a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires to be the censors of all political speech in America is a terrible outcome. And so I think Senator Hawley's bill is a positive step in the right direction.
Democrats have also increasingly turned against big tech, but for different reasons. Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said he sees elements of Hawley's proposal that he could support.
Like in any business, there are already prohibitions about deceptive practices, there are basic consumer protections. We don't have any of that in the social media world. The rub comes in how you define those practices.
All of this is to say that Hawley's proposal is more than just a long-shot bill. His proposal represents the changing nature of the conversation around technology in Washington, D.C., and a converging frustration about big tech that is bringing lawmakers out of their comfort zones to propose unorthodox solutions. Tim Mack, NPR News.
That was a little deceptive there. So if I'm not mistaken, it's what the bill from Missouri, and unfortunately it's somewhat Republican, what the bill is intended on doing is eliminating these things on websites that cause you to mindlessly go through them, infinite scroll like on Twitter or Facebook, and then the autoplay features for videos you might be interested in. The idea that our government should be regulating how information is provided to us, that's a really terrible and wasteful use of their time to provide someone something that they acknowledge, and they voluntarily go through. We know what we're doing when we're on our phones. We know. I know I'm wasting my time when I'm on YouTube. But sometimes, hey, these videos are really pertinent. I enjoy listening to them, or I enjoy watching them, or they are relevant to what I'm trying to research. Especially when I'm doing research for these podcasts with Chris. These can be super helpful. It's not always stuff I would consider looking up. But the way I find that news piece to be deceptive was they made it seem like Ted Cruz and these other people were open to the idea of these types of regulations when they were really giving answers towards more broad control taking of these social media platforms. So it really wasn't we need to break up people's news feeds and control them and protect people from information in the way information is being presented to them online. It was, these companies have too much power and we should look into trying to regulate them. That's really what I got from that piece. The way I see the Missouri bill is it's like if the government regulated how large your gas tank can be on your car, or how far your car can drive without having to fill it back up, in order to keep you from just driving on. That's a weird thing. It's a stupid bill. Well, my job keeps fucking calling me, so we keep getting cut up there. But I think I ended that last section pretty well, so let's just continue on here.
We tend to turn a blind eye to things that we really don't want to see, as much as we might deny that. Our teens are out in this community and exposed to all sorts of things.
Chapman says rather than asking young people outright if they vape, ask them about their environment.
Are many kids at school vaping? Are many kids using e-cigarettes?
Chapman says many young people assume vaping is not dangerous. Remind them that's what many people thought about cigarettes for decades.
Help them understand that what seems obvious, cigarettes cause cancer, was not obvious for a long, long time. And the concept that e-cigarettes or vaping is safer is something that we really haven't established.
Parents should also watch out for suspected lung infections that aren't getting better.
If you have a child who has a respiratory illness that is not improving the way you would expect it to over the course of a week, or who may have gotten some treatment for a diagnosis of a pneumonia or a bronchitis, and even in that context things are not improving, then that's worth looking at more closely.
Finally, Chapman says behavior changes could point to possible e-cigarette use.
We would always be concerned with teenagers who have difficulty keeping up with their peers, who have excessive cough, who may have been performing well on their athletic team and now are struggling to some extent.
But Chapman cautions those symptoms could have nothing to do with vaping and instead could indicate anything from asthma to depression. Mark Sadek, NPR News.
What a fuck-nothing piece.
A new analysis from NPR shows that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is housing more than 50% of migrants in rural areas.
Cheap labor, cheap land.
But advocates for immigrants say being so far away from legal help means a greater chance of being deported.
I've never seen an immigration attorney up there.
You've never seen one?
Nope, never.
On the next morning edition from NPR News.
Gotta get up awfully early in the morning to beat Morning Edition. It's on the air starting at 4, so when you wake up, all the news you need here on NPR News. Phil Picardi in for Kathy Mercer tomorrow. Well, on Wall Street today, not a good day for the major indices. The Dow was off just over 800 points, 801.5. It closed at 25,479.5. If you're wondering, that is a 3% loss, and similar losses for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 today. More on Marketplace about what it means, if it means anything at all, at 6 p.m. here on NPR News.
I'm Jane Simmons, host of the podcast Decomposed. We bring you the stories that have shaped classical music, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, and the acts of sheer genius that changed everything. Listen to Decomposed wherever you listen to podcasts.
Potatoes and Irish stew and the cliche of corned beef and cabbage. Well, forget whatever stereotypes you have of Irish cooking. Last weekend at the Irish Fair, some diners were given a sampling of today's Irish cuisine. That chef, today on Appetites.
This guy has this show just to be fed, I swear.
Chef Fergal Phelan has worked in a few of Ireland's kitchens. Phelan was back in the Twin Cities again to demonstrate and cook an Irish meal as part of the big Irish Fair this past weekend. And he stopped by to talk to us when he was here about the evolution of Irish food. Chef Fergal Phelan, welcome back to the Twin Cities.
Thank you, great to be back again.
So to someone who's not at all familiar with it or has misconceptions, how do you describe Irish cuisine?
Irish cuisine has just changed a lot over the years, and it's very modern now. A lot of artisan produce. You know, we're very proud of the rich countryside, the food we have. Lots of pork, bacon. Our beef is probably the best in Europe. Our milk, our dairy. You know, we're very proud and passionate about the produce we have, and our seafood, of course.
Irish accent's the best accent.
Where you grew up in Tipperary, and then you live now in Waterford. That area, a lot of dairy farms, right? Yeah, up in North Kilkenny, a lot of dairy farms. Avonmore, or as you know, I'm over in America, Glanbia. Their big factory is in my hometown. So I would have butter and cream. Yeah, all the best of butter and cream. Kerrygold would have been made there for export. So I would have grown up with that in the background, and my parents' cafe as well. So, you know, from a young age, I was working there, making soups and sauces. You know, I still go back there today, and my parents still work in the cafe. And it's one of those places like a diner in America. They don't have a menu. You go in, you know, and there's a soup on. It's either vegetable or oxtail. You know, you'll have a choice of 3 or 4 meats. If you want sandwiches, if you want an all-day breakfast, you know, they cater for everyone, but there isn't an exact menu.
Dublin is becoming a pretty global city, and a lot of people from around the EU and elsewhere living there, working there, opening restaurants or working in restaurants. Has that had an influence on Irish cooking as well?
Big influence, and a lot of our chefs went abroad, we'll say, in the 90s to 2000s when things weren't as good in Ireland. Even myself, I travelled to Australia and worked there for a year, and came back through America in San Francisco and Chicago and Boston, and saw all these different foods and trends, and they've been brought back to Ireland. So it's more a multicultural place now. The food is so much more advanced. Like, we've got 11 Michelin star restaurants in the country, which is great, you know, and these are chefs who had worked in Dublin or in Europe and came back to their hometown cities, opened up restaurants that are now Michelin recommendations.
You're here, you've been back again to the Irish Fair this past weekend. This is, I think, the 3rd year you've done this.
That's correct.
Tell me about the expectations and even misconceptions that maybe a lot of Irish Americans have when they think they're going to get an Irish meal, and then what they actually get.
Yeah, there might be some small misconceptions. Like, I was talking to someone and, you know, they're asking me, what do I do at my restaurant? It's like, we have our soups, our chowders, our burgers, our ribs, salads, you know, different dressings that would be regular to American customers, and you'll find that nearly everywhere in Ireland now. We don't eat corned beef. It's the only thing I would say is the misconception I do come across. I don't think I've cooked it for about 25 years.
How did that get started here, do you think?
We exported the corned beef to America. So it was like, you know, we always process pork to make bacon, so that had to be salted down. So the same process was done with cheaper cuts of beef. They were salted down just to make them more tender. And then when you boiled it, you could slice it, you could break it up, you can pull it. You know, just so much more you can do with it.
So what do you cook for people, let's say people from visiting you from another country, or when you want to show them the very best of Irish cooking?
Seafood I'd always start with. You know, we got some of the best seafood, and where I'm living in Waterford, we're 5 miles from the coast, so I can get produce from Dunmore or from Anstown, you know, fresh lobsters, mussels, scallops, prawns, you know, and all the fish.
Yeah.
You know, it's just in abundance. Like, I've been out in Tramore Harbour fishing for mackerel. You know, it's like picking sand on the beach.
Yeah.
They just jump into the boat. So definitely seafood, we want those things. I've always cooked scallops. I love the, you know, when you can get that crust on the outside of your scallops. Nice, big, firm, juicy scallops.
Yeah.
We done them at the fair last year with black pudding and chicken wings. We had the chicken wings confit, and we removed the bones. So you had a crispy boneless chicken wing, your black pudding, which is very traditional, and we still eat a lot of it in Ireland, and your nice fresh scallop.
And for people who aren't familiar with black pudding, it is a sausage.
It is a sausage. It's skinless, so it's usually it's formed into a plastic casing, and it's boiled in that. So when you buy it, it is actually cooked. A lot of people think it's raw, but in Ireland we have to treat it as a raw product. So when we get it in, we have to heat it up. So whether we cook it in the oven, do it in the pan, you can even deep fry it. Some people even put it in the microwave because it softens up, and then you can spread it on toast or bread. So some of them have that pate kind of consistency. Other ones are more rustic. They put oats and barley through.
Barley in them, yeah. And you get those with a full Irish breakfast.
With full Irish breakfast.
Discs, they're served like
usually in discs.
Yeah.
And sometimes at lunchtime they cut them into cubes and pan fried, and you have that with your salad. So a black pudding and apple salad is it's been on Irish menus maybe 20 years now, and people still love it.
Well, Fergal Phelan, thanks so much for coming in, talking to us about Irish food.
Thank you very much.
It's one of the few times that guy hasn't gotten fed during his
offering book lovers a broad selection
little
of bestsellers,
segments like
collectibles,
that.
even LPs and audiobooks. Information on HPB Book Club store.
I just imagine him. His name's Tom Cran. I imagine him just wearing a sweater vest, and like he's got like the napkin tucked into the collar, just waiting to be fed.
Today we get.
He sounds like he always has about half a mouthful of oatmeal. You know, he's always just got food on him.
Right now,
he's the kind of guy that has almonds in his pocket just in case.
Thunderstorm in the afternoon, high in the upper 70s. Friday, upper 70s. Again, slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm. Fair skies and 77 degrees. It is 4 p.m. in the north, and this is NPR News 91.1. KNOW Minneapolis, St. Paul, discovering what matters. A woman who accused Jeffrey Epstein of rape has filed a lawsuit against his estate and an associate.
While I am angry that Mr. Epstein's death means he will never personally answer to me in the court of law, my resolve to pursue justice is only strengthened.
She come before he
It's all
died?
things considered on NPR News with Elsa Chang and Mary Louise Kelly in Washington. I'm Tom Cran in the Twin Cities, and after the news, we'll hear from the attorney representing Epstein's accuser. Then we'll take a look at the situation in Kashmir as a strict communications blackout by the Indian government continues there. Later, a St. Paul gymnast is in the running for the National World Championship gymnastic team, and probably, or possibly, the 2020 Olympics, where she'd be the first Hmong American to compete. We'll hear from Sunisa Lee in about 50 minutes. First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Heavy selling on Wall Street today. The major U.S. stock indices all plunged around 3%. The Dow shed 800 points. As NPR's Chris Arnold reports, investors are worried about signs that trade tensions are slowing down economic growth around the world.
One thing that's rattling investors is that there's a red warning light blinking in the bond market. Bear with me here, but the yields on 10-year treasuries fell below 2-year treasuries, which is unusual. It's weird. Normally you get a bigger return when you invest in longer-term treasuries. But when a lot of investors start to get worried about the economy, the demand for bonds creates this unusual situation. Economists call it an inverted yield curve, and it can be a warning sign that a recession is coming. On top of that, the Trump administration is fueling uncertainty with mixed messages in its escalating trade war. Also, there's sluggish economic news out of China and Europe. The U.S. economy is still pretty strong, but many investors are being more cautious and selling stocks. Chris Arnold, NPR News.
Environmental groups are joining 22 states in suing the Trump administration over a plan to roll back Obama-era limits on coal-fired power plants. NPR's Jeff Brady reports the plaintiffs warn the new rule will lead to more pollution and worsen climate change.
In June, the Trump administration finalized its Affordable Clean Energy, or ACE, rule. It rolls back requirements of the Obama administration's Clean Power Plan, which aimed to reduce by a third greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. The new Trump administration rule would allow some coal-fired plants to continue operating. They likely would have shut down under the Obama-era rule. 10 environmental groups, including Natural Resources Defense Council and Sierra Club, are asking a federal appeals court to vacate the new rule, arguing it violates the Clean Air Act. Jeff Brady, NPR News.
That is one thing that both sides have had kind of a shitty history with, is you're not allowed to poison your neighbor. You're not allowed to poison your neighbor, shorten their lifespans, give them cancer, those kind of things. You know, it's one thing. You know, a lot of what Obama did was in the vein and in the regard of, oh my God, global warming. You know, those kind of things. The thing is to actually, you know, CO2 is a very natural. It doesn't affect us negatively, at least for our body's sake. You know, global warming, there's a lot of unknown regarding it. So to ban people from or tax them heavily based on, you know, kind of an ethereal issue, that I don't agree with. However, when you hear about these people that, you know, cancer pockets in near factories, you know, it's a big thing in kind of like the South too. North Minneapolis as well, my neighborhood, and one of the reasons why rent is probably so cheap is because we had a metal recycling factory, and I've not seen the statistics, but supposedly there were cancer pockets in this area that I'm living in right now. A company is not allowed to poison the air, poison the water, and it's the government turns a blind eye and basically allows them to get away with it because there's an economic incentive. And this goes beyond Republican or Democrat. Companies should not have protections deemed from the government, allowing them to dispose of materials irresponsibly. Just like I can't give my neighbor cancer by, you know, burning leaves every day. I can't, you know, dump chemicals in the water, you know, those kind of things. I can't poison my neighbor. I can't make my neighbor sick. It's an affront to their rights to live healthily, to be healthy. That's one of my big things I don't like about, you know, I'm very pro-business, very pro-free market. However, the court system should be playing such a much larger role in holding these companies accountable, and the risk associated with these businesses should not go unchallenged. All right. Well, guys, I am home. I got a couple phone calls on my way home, so that's why there's a few cuts in here. Apparently, I can't keep recording when my phone's ringing, so it's been another day of. Well, That's Your Opinion Man, the Shellen Show, or Andrew Shellen of Well, That's Your Opinion Man. Very happy for you guys to watch, listen on my way home from work. Feel free to give me a like, share, subscribe, and we will continue on from there. Thank you.